a standing room only crowd here to hear what your candidates have to say. Barbara may have told you, but what we're going to do as far as the mayoral candidates are concerned is one will answer the first question, the second one will respond, then the second one will answer the next question, the first one will respond. We'll go back and forth for 90 seconds, and then at the end of the questions, we will have a 90-minute closing statement. 90-minute, oh good gracious. I'll tell you what, political season gets to me sometimes. There is a timer up front. Each one of the candidates can see the timer. And I've told each one of the candidates that it's my policy not to stop them directly when the timer goes off. I will not cut them off at 1:30. I will let them finish their sentence, but I will not let them start another point. I will not let them start another thought. I don't like cutting somebody off in mid-sentence. I just don't work that way, but I'm not going to let them go another minute and a half or 2 minutes afterwards either. So we're going to get this done in a timely fashion, in a civil fashion, and we know when you walk out, you'll know more about Sin Brochure and Kenny Rogers. Ms. Brochure, I'm going to ask you the first question, ma'am. You have 90 seconds. The first question is for you, and it is, what leadership skills and qualities distinguish you to be the mayor of Oak Island?
Well, I think most of you know me by now. I've been in office for 2 years, and before then I was in Southport for 5. My leadership abilities come from my experience in tourism and economic development, and before then I had other skills, but for the last 15 years that's been primarily what I've done. I think my record speaks for itself as a leader and a guider for the council. You're lucky to have one of the best councils. I have been on Oak Island since 2007, and it's the best council I have ever seen, because they all do what's best for the town, and it's not separate. We just all work together really well. Other than that, I don't know anything I can tell you other than my website. Feel free to go on there. You can see my qualifications, what I've done, some of my past. It's sinbrochure.com. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Rogers, what leadership skills and qualities distinguish you to be the mayor of Oak Island? What leadership skills and qualities distinguish you to be the mayor of Oak Island?
Thank you. I have had a long and varied working experience. I started in the chemistry lab, and when I started, I would not answer the telephone because I did not know the answers. I always took pride in my work, and because of my hard work, I ended up working in Colombia, South America, Mexico, Italy, Germany, and Canada, always solving problems. I also worked in big corporations with huge budgets, and I was always great with numbers. Thank you.
If you'd stay there, Mr. Rogers, I'm going to have you respond to the next question first, sir. So if you can stay at the podium, that would be great.
Okay.
Second question, sir. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the town of Oak Island? And how would you, as mayor, work to meet them?
The biggest challenge we got at Oak Island is debt, debt, debt. I would address it and go inside the budget and line item everyone to find out where we can cut cost. Also, I have some ideas on how to go out and get private money, because inside we do not have enough money today to pay all our debts.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Brochure, I ask you the same question. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the town of Oak Island, and how would you, as mayor, work to meet them?
Well, first let me just say one quick thing about the debt that this town has. We are in debt. We have debt service for the buildings, the fire buildings, and things in the past. This is not including, I'm not talking about the sewer enterprise system. We have $5,179,000,000 in debt. In 3 years, by the year 2020, that debt will be paid. I'm not sure what debt. That's the only debt I know of. And in 3 years, that'll be paid. It even may be paid sooner if the council decides to pay it off a little earlier. it's about 1,700,000 a year for the next 3 years. Ending in 2021 budget. The biggest challenge, actually, I don't see any really challenges for Oak Island in future. It's as good as it's been ever. We have money coming in for a pier that costs $2.5 million. That money will be paid for that pier. The challenge is always going to be the beachfront and our shoreline, and that is something we've got to solve. But I don't believe that's something that we can solve on the back of the people. So this council and I, with my leadership with the council, have been working on many other ways. We will not leave one stone unturned.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Brochure, if you could stay at the podium for the next question. The next question, Ms. Brochure, is what is your vision and approach to preserving Oak Island's beaches?
My vision and approach?
Vision and approach to preserving Oak Island's beaches.
Shoreline protection, and I'm going to read from my notes just so I can get it right. Funding for shoreline protection and storm mitigation is a very complicated issue. For the past 2 years, the council has been exploring various ways to fund shoreline protection. In 2017, the council, under my leadership, voted to create a shoreline protection fund by increasing the tax rate 2 cents and increase the contribution from the occupancy tax, or accommodations tax as some call it, from 2 to 3%. These funds are protected and are set up so they can only be used in shoreline upkeep and shoreline projects. When re-elected, I will endeavor to continue to search for fund sources that will ensure Oak Island's future as a vintage beach and a tourist destination. I would approach this issue exactly like council began in 2017. Create a local sustainable maintenance plan for the shoreline. 3% in the occupancy tax, as I stated. And that produces a pool of money that is only used for shoreline protection. I will continue to engage the government, the elected officials in Raleigh and on the federal level as well. I will advocate for the state to adopt the beach and inlet management plan, and that was on a state level of a pool of $20 million for matching funds for the 8 coastal counties that have shorelines. And I'll continue to advocate for the 1/2 cent food tax to go toward the beach and shoreline fund.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Rogers, I ask you for your response to the next question, sir. The question is, what is your vision and approach to preserving Oak Island's beaches?
Well, it is well known that past history has been a failure. Oak Island Beach is an economic engine that drives this town. People do not come to Brunswick County to go to Shallotte and Leland. They come to Oak Island for the beaches. I have a plan, just give you an idea of what the cost is. We wonder. Holden Beach spent $15 million for their 8 miles of beach. Oak Island is projecting $40 million for 12 miles. If you take and elongate Holden Beach from 8 miles to 12 miles, we're talking about $22.5 million. That is a difference of $17.5 million between the two towns. And I'm wondering, and you should ask, who is doing the projecting and who is doing the bargaining for Oak Island?
Mr. Rogers, I'm going to ask you to stay at the podium, sir, and respond first to the next question. As a result of an executive order President Trump signed in April of this year, which reversed the freeze on offshore oil development in the Atlantic, we may see in the future some exploration for oil, including seismic blasting, happening along the Cape Fear coastline. The question, sir, to you, what are your thoughts on this issue?
No offshore drilling, period, none. We have seen what has happened in the Gulf, and because of poor management from the EPA, we had a catastrophe. And if we have a catastrophe in the Atlantic Ocean, we're not only going to have problems here, the Gulf Stream is going to take it all the way to Europe.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Brochure, I ask you, as a result of an executive order signed by the President in April, which reverse the freeze on offshore oil development in the Atlantic, we may see in the future some exploration for oil, including seismic blasting along the Cape Fear coast. What are your thoughts on the issue?
I couldn't agree more with my opponent. I am totally 100% against drilling off our coast or fracking or any seismic testing. Been vocal about that, have sign in my yard. Anybody that knows me knows how I feel about that. And I'm very strongly set. I can't change my mind. And I would never support anything other than a no-drill policy for Oak Island area.
Ms. Brochure, I'm going to ask you to stay at the podium,
It's
if
confusing.
I can. Ask you for your response, ma'am, to the next question.
Sure.
Does the current commercial district need improvement, and what ideas do you have to make it more attractive?
Does it need improvement?
Does it need improvement, and what ideas do you have to make it more attractive?
You can always improve. I don't care how good it is. You can always have room for improvement. But if you've lived in Oak Island the last 2 years, you will notice a visible difference on how the commercial district has blossomed and gotten way more attractive and beautiful. And what was the rest of the question?
What ideas do you have to make it more attractive?
Keep doing what we're doing, enforcing our ordinances.
Okay. Mr. Rogers, I asked you.
Making it work, John.
Mr. Rogers, I'm going to ask you to respond to the same question, sir. Does the current commercial district need improvement? And what ideas do you have to make it more attractive?
We go back to the coast. If we do not improve our beach, we're going to lose tourists. We're going to lose tax dollars, and we will not have the money to put the infrastructure that we need to make it better.
All right, Mr. Rogers, I'm going to ask you to respond first to the next question. This is going to get a lot more complicated with 6 people up here the next time, I'm telling you. Mr. Rogers, would you say codes are uniformly enforced in Oak Island, or is their enforcement mainly complaint-driven? And explain your answer, if you would.
Repeat that again, please.
Would you say codes are uniformly enforced in Oak Island, or is their enforcement mainly complaint-driven? And explain your answer, if you would.
There's a lot of decisions made in this room right here, but when it goes outside, it's changed. That's the bottom line. We need a plan that everybody comes to the table for, and when we go outside, everyone understands how it works and how it's going to work.
Ms. Brochure, would you say codes are uniformly enforced in Oak Island, or is their enforcement mainly complaint-driven? And explain your answer, if you would.
I think the way I hear your question, you're asking me if we enforce our ordinances and our laws. I will say that previously to this council coming aboard, there was some very tough times in Oak Island, and there was a very short staff, and I think at that time it was complaint-driven. Since we've came on board, we've set them loose. If there's, if you're going to enforce you, and our department heads and our town manager knows from the direction of this council that we've said if you're going to enforce, then you enforce equally. And we expect it to be fair amongst everyone. And I think that's why some of the improvement of the visual and beauty of the island is improving, is because we have turned them loose and set them free to do their job.
Ms. Brochure, I'm going to ask you to respond first to the what is going to be the last of the questions, and then you'll each have a closing statement. Your term as mayor of Oak Island is for 2 years. At the end of the 2 years, what factors would you use to assess the success or failure of your term in office? I'll give it to you again.
Okay.
Your term as mayor of Oak Island is 2 years.
Yes, sir.
At the end of 2 years, what factors would you use to assess the success or failure of your term in office?
I would measure the success on how our credit rating has improved, on the money we've come in, has come in on under my leadership, the overall betterment of the community, and whether our finances are stable. And we look at that when we look at our budget year, and I stand on my record. We're we're headed for a bright future. I kind of like to say that the Island Vibe, we need to keep the Island Vibe alive. Every time I go on the street, people tell me what a great job and how the island feels good. It's coming back. We have new people on this island that think they live in paradise. I'm an old person, and I think I live in paradise. That's how I judge it, by how the feel.
Okay. Mr. Rogers, I'm going to ask you to respond to the same question, sir. Your term as mayor of Oak Island is for 2 years. At the end of that 2 years, what factors would you use to assess the success or failure of your term in office?
I would say there's two things. I know this coast. I've studied it for over 30 years. I know how the wind works. I know how the waves work. And I know how the currents work. And I would use this knowledge to make a better beach far cheaper than anything else I've seen. And the next thing, I have a plan to go out for private money. And if we can get some private money, a few $1 million, it would do a great deal towards making things better for all of us.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Rogers, I'm going to ask you to stand up there first, please. We've gone through the questions provided by the League of Women Voters. We're going to ask each one of these candidates to give a closing statement, anything we may not have touched on that you'd like to touch on, and anything that you want the public to know about you as a candidate. Mr. Kenny Rogers, you have 90 seconds for your closing statement, sir.
Debt, debt, and debt. Lockwood Folly Inlet has been a big thorn in Oak Island's side. We'll give you an example. Holden Beach lost 27 homes in 15 years, probably at a cost of about $15 million. Then they came out and spent $15 million this year to re-nourish their beach. We're looking at $40 million for Oak Island, which makes $70 million. They want 23 million more in 6 years, which makes $93 million. Then they want to give Moffitt Nichols $2.9 million to do something they had a problem they created. That makes $95.9 million. Now, I don't have that much, do y'all? And y'all need to ask the question, why? Now, here's the thing. I'm not great with the King's English, but I am very good with numbers. Thank you.
Next, for her closing statement this evening, we will get 90 seconds from Sin Brochure. Ms. Brochure?
Mr. Rogers is much taller, so I apologize for having to keep that coming up and down. Serving as mayor of Oak Island has been one of my most pleasures and honors that I've ever had in my lifetime. My goal has always been to make life better for every single one who calls Oak Island home. I have worked hard every single day to make that goal a reality. Vote for me on November 7th, and I promise to keep the Island Vibe alive, and thank everyone for coming. It's so good to see so many engaged in their community. And vote for who you want, but get out and vote. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, will you give a round of applause to Sin Brochure and Kenny Rogers? If you will give us a couple of moments, we will switch out the candidates, and then we'll get to the 6 candidates running for town council.